What up? It's Golden Spaces, an Odyssey original podcast with Justin and Nat. It is officially our first podcast of the NBA 2023-24 season. Unfortunately, we are not talking about a dub for the Dubs, Justin, but first game of the season at home and they lost. A little surprising. Maybe not. Because after they've won championships, they've gotten some L's on opening night. And we were just like, oh, championship hangover. But they ain't win last year. So, and in this situation, they were trying to win the game. So it's not all doom and gloom, although, there were already a large contingent of the fan base overreacting. But yeah, I mean, I think I thought there was a lot of positive, from that game. So before we kind of dig into that, what did you see and what are your thoughts on the game from them on opening night?
Yeah, I take a lot of positive from it as well. Like, obviously, you want to win, especially at home. I think they have to establish a really good home record again. But, I mean, you held the Suns to 108, right? They're going to be one of the best offenses in the league. Granted, they were missing Bradley Beal, but we were missing Draymond Green, right? So they're missing one of their better offensive players. We're missing our very best defensive player. Still held them to 108. I think forced 20 or maybe more turnovers. Pretty much locked KD up, made KD look kind of washed, to be honest.
Yeah.
Other than Booker, nobody on their team really had it going offensively. I mean, Okogie and Nurk kind of just killed them in the hustle plays. But just from straight up defense standpoint, they did really well. I mean, like I said, 108 I think the Suns had 17 offensive rebounds. So imagine if that's like 10. Do they crack 100 points? You know what I mean? Like, so that's a super positive coming from it. Chris Paul looked pretty good. That's another positive. And yeah, they had a chance to win. They just needed one or two more plays to go their way.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming into this game, knowing that Draymond was going to be out and also knowing the way the Suns play, I think a lot of people were expecting like a big offensive, just like, lots of threes and lots of offense, lots of scoring. And it wasn't that. Both teams struggled to shoot initially in the beginning. And, it wasn't that. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it being an ugly game because I want to see our defense be better this season. So I was pleasantly surprised by the way that they sort of kept KD, in check and didn't allow him to go off. Some of their role players stepped up, the Suns,
That's what won them the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, they and our role players were pretty good too. Well, I guess it depends on who you consider a role player, and we can get into that. But it wasn't our starters yesterday. I'll tell you that. Like,
and it kind of hasn't been in preseason either.
Right.
So
the bench has been carrying, which is what we need, but we do need our starters to eventually look like starters for them to have their ceiling. But we're seeing from the bench guys and the ancillary pieces the things that we need to see, which is them getting us back in the game or building leads or holding leads or, pushing other teams. And we've both been saying this, like, we're deep and we have like a deep team this year, and that's our strength, since at the top our top end talent isn't where it used to be. So to me, those were all pleasant things to see as well. I think I have a little bit of a slightly different take than everyone, because everyone was kind of like going off about the rebounds. And like, yeah, first of all, we just have to always acknowledge our team is smaller than others. So like other teams have more length than us, but the rebounding to me wasn't like the biggest, most glaring issue outside of Andrew Wiggins. Like, he needs to grab more boards. But when you really looked across the board, Clay, Chris Paul, Steph, I think Steph had 5, and I'm sure if he didn't get into early foul trouble, he would have grabbed some more. Loon had like 11. even Jonathan Kuminga had a decent amount. Like, this wasn't really a game where like the main guys who were on the floor for a lot of minutes weren't rebounding outside of Andrew. They're missing Draymond, who's one of their rebounders, and also they played a team with more size. So I think in terms of team rebounding, they were actually pretty good. But Andrew definitely has to grab some more boards when he's out there. Definitely, especially if Draymond's out, but just in general, he needs to. We've always said that at his position, and Clay needs to continue to grab some of those boards. So those were my thoughts on the rebounds. And I just thought, I mean, the 3 guard lineup that everyone was complaining about, I mean, Corey Joseph really only played 3 minutes, but those 3 minutes were pretty detrimental. They were pretty crucial. And I saw a tweet that you had, which I liked, because it wasn't so much about like Corey Joseph playing bad. It's just, you can't have Corey Joseph, Chris Paul, and Steph out there together. And so in those 3 minutes, it was pretty bad. They got into a
They were -12.
yes, and they got into a deficit. Like, to me, there were 2 points where the game was lost, right? Like, that was the first point, but I guess you can say not really, because they got themselves back into the game. But the second one was when Steph picked up that 5th foul and had to go to the bench. And to me, those were like the 2 really big key things. And in general, I would say the foul trouble really hurt their rotations, right? Like, I'm sure Steve Kerr did not want to play Chris Paul as many minutes as he did, even with Draymond out. And Steph didn't play as many minutes as he should have, and also the wonky rotations didn't allow him to really get into the rhythm that he needed. And then of course Jonathan Kuminga also, with some early foul trouble. So they definitely got to be mindful of that, because I think that really threw off things. But with all that said, with a poor shooting performance, they were still in the game, still had the ability to win, at one point had taken hold and control of the game. And I think that those are all positive things.
Yeah. I think overall, I mean, they're going to be better as the season goes on, obviously, but because they don't have an overwhelming amount of size, they need to be sharper. I think just in all of the marginal things throughout the game. Like, I keep preaching on the timeline, like screen navigation. They have to get around screens better. And Nurk is a huge guy, so like he's going to be a good screener. But getting around screens better allows for guys to stay in their position and not have to overhelp. If you have to overhelp, whether or not a guy actually gets open for a shot is less relevant than the positions of the players on the court. So if a shot goes up, guys are in better position for offensive rebounds because you're overhelping, or somebody can get an offensive rebound, then you try to swipe down the ball, and now you're fouling and you're racking fouls up. So it's a cascading effect of those little things. And especially with Draymond out, they have to be sharper on those things because they don't have the athleticism and the size to make up for those mistakes like a team like San Antonio. Like, those guys can make mistakes all over the court because Wemby can just take shit away. Like, Anthony Davis can just take stuff away. Draymond is one of the best guys at putting out fires on the court defensively and sometimes even offensively, but they just, to be the best team that they can possibly be, they need to not have as many fires as any other. Like, they need to have less fires than every other team, pretty much. So that's something to look for going forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, asking them to have to play like a perfectly every game is probably not a realistic thing.
Right.
But they have a superpower too. While other teams have certain things, they have shooting. It just was off tonight. You don't expect a night where like Steph is going to shoot like that, Clay is going to shoot like that. Wiggins was so abysmal, and we'll get into that too. But like, I mean, they're just not going to have a night where like think like they can. I get the margin of error is smaller for them, but like they're just not going to be able to play perfect like that every night. So
Sure.
they shot pretty poorly last night, which I think is not the norm for them, especially not at home, so like we'll just have to see as the season continues. But like, I mean, it's just really hard to be upset on game one. Like, even if they looked really, really bad, it would still be really hard. But being that they didn't and they look like a solid team, I think, you got to just like take it with a grain,
Hmm.
of salt and sort of move on. Um, and we should move on. Let's sort of I want to dive a little bit into some of the individual players on the team and how they perform. So let's start with Steph. You know, Steph has foul trouble. Um, Especially when Draymond's out. And look, some of them were ticky tack. So I'm not saying that they weren't, but he knows how like they call fouls on him. He knows how they, he just has to really try to be careful. That fifth one he picked up was really annoying. Because it's just like while Chris Paul being there does help with the non-Steph minutes, they still need you. They need you on the court and they need you being able to play the minutes,
Hmm.
So that really hurt. He just has to be a little smarter in those moments. And I still would have liked to see Steph attack some more. Like his shot wasn't falling. And for me, it's always the same. Like, and I get it. He is the best person to shoot a basketball ever. But it's like I just don't love the like, even though he hit a clutch three, right? It's just you were still getting basically anything you wanted inside. Like you could have gone inside. There were some threes that he went for, especially like when they were trying to like kind of get back and take the lead. And your shot really hadn't been falling all night. And I know that sounds like counterintuitive considering like then he hit a clutch, but it's just like I think you could have like taken that lead away if you were just like attacking and going inside. And so that's going to still be my same thing with them not settling for the threes, particularly Steph.
Yeah, I mean, even CP3 was getting inside and finishing.
Right.
I was thinking the same thing in real time. Like Nurkic is not. I mean, he's a decent rim protector, like his numbers show, but like he can't stay on an island with Steph. Like, if you get by him, I feel very confident Steph's going to be able to finish. He had a super tough finish over Booker. Like, they really have nothing for them going to the rim.
Right, and it's
Um,
not a fatigue thing. It's game 1, and
it's
you're the
game one.
best conditioned player in the NBA. So it's just
Yeah.
like it's settling. It's just your desire to do it with the 3, your desire like not shooting well, so you want to get it going. But to
Mhm.
me, it wasn't the smartest in that moment.
No, I agree. He was 4 for 14 from three and
Yeah,
4 for 6 on twos. So like
right,
clearly should have leaned a little bit more in on the twos. And he took 7 free throws. So they were giving you calls going to the
right.
rim. Um, so yeah, definitely should have did that. I think his overall game could have been better. Like, I mean, the crazy thing is 27-6 and 27-6 is like a bad game for him. But
I
like
know.
but he definitely could have been better, could have been more efficient, made better decisions on the offensive end as far as going to the basket. He had a tough task guarding Book for a lot of this game. Like that guy's kind of unguardable. So um, take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think Book was probably better this game. And Steph just had he could have just been way better. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah. And talk about other takeaways that we missed in that first block, but yeah, like they were getting fouls. They were getting fouls, and they capitalized off the Suns' turnovers.
Hmm.
And they scored a lot, and they didn't have a crazy amount of turnovers. So also very good things to see over the course of the game. Um, I would have actually liked, and look, maybe he would have lost, but I would just like sometimes if Steve Kerr would challenge some of these ticky tack bullshit fouls on Steph. I thought the challenge for Kaminga was a good one as well. I think the explanation was bullshit. you
Yeah,
know, like why was Book's contact minimal, but it's like
I thought that was a no call both
right. To
ways.
me, it should have just been a no call. And it's like, if anything, Kaminga's reacting to what Booker did. So to me, that
Yeah.
was total bullshit, but whatever.
And Book's a grown man, like 6'6", 200 plus pounds. I'm sure he, flopped a little bit on that Kaminga. Kaminga's a
Yeah.
strong guy, but Book just completely was out of the play. Like, come on, bro. And then you just
Yeah,
reward that type of stuff is just very weak to me, especially given how physical the game was outside of that. But
for sure.
I think, I mean, it's interesting. I think Kerr is like trying to show Jonathan, like, yo, I trust you.
Yeah.
You know, he finished the game with Jonathan and he challenged the call on Jonathan. I think he's kind of like, yo, I'm trusting you, so trust me a little bit when I tell you to do certain things. Like, listen to me because I'm on your side. So I thought that was a good little subplot going on in the game. Um, but yeah, that was a trash call.
Yeah, very much so. Um, Also, speaking of Kaminga, let's talk about him. We mentioned the early foul trouble earlier, but a pretty good game from him. He's gonna need to hit free throws though in critical moments. You
Yeah.
know, one of two, I would have still liked it ties the game, but like
Yeah.
to miss both, especially because you're one of our people who can get to the line. You're gonna get those calls. He has to get that free throw percentage up and better. It just has to. It has to be something that he works on. Serves us no purpose if he's getting there and can't get it up. And eventually, not eventually, but the same for Andrew Wiggins, who we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about next. But he sometimes, because of his handle, as we know, doesn't like to try to attack and things like that. And also, I don't think fully trusts his free throw shooting, but those guys need to, it's going to be continue to be a thing for me. Like you gotta, you know, I would like to see the free throws around in the 70 to 75% range, to
Yeah.
me would be like ideal. So, but I mean, great game from Kaminga. He finished and Kerr benched Wiggins. I'm not mad at it, um, and look, unlike, it's unfortunate because Wiggins has really been key for this team, but unlike the other three, he doesn't have that goodwill with the team where it's going to be like, we're just never going to bench you. Like Clay can have a game like that all night.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe Kerr, but we'll see. He said whoever's playing the best is going to close. And if that's true, then that makes me happy. I just don't know if he's really going to do that to like a Clay, or a Draymond. And really not like Steph and Draymond kind of always need to play for the most part. But, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But he was talking good talk. Let's see if he continues to do that. But I wasn't mad at it at all. When it comes to Andrew Wiggins, in my opinion, well, not just in my opinion, I know yours too on some level because you've said this, but like people like Clay and him probably hurt the most when a Draymond is out. And so I think when you see Draymond get back, Wiggs will look better. And I just think always with Wiggs, because we've seen this before with the Warriors, right? They have to be intentional with him. They have to be intentional with running some easy plays for him and actions. And they don't, he kind of gets his points just in the flow of the game, but like they don't really run things for him. And I think especially if he's struggling and we see it like in more games, they need to try to find a way to like get him going.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him a few post ups. I think he scored on one of them and then just didn't score on the other two. But yeah, I think also the way their offense is set up, like it's heavily dependent on Steph and Clay drawing multiple defenders, and he should be able to eat off of that type of stuff, right? If he just kind of floats, then it's just not going to be something that they're going to really lean into with him. But I do think they need to run more stuff for him. They just got to put him in better positions. But like once he gets in those positions, you got to take advantage, right? It's no way Eric Gordon should be stopping you in the block. It's no way Devin Booker should be stopping you in the block. Like you're too athletic, strong, and he's a skilled post player. He has good footwork and stuff like that. But yeah, overall game just wasn't really like into it. It seemed, he
Yeah.
missed a few bunnies. Like in transition, he should
Right.
be unstoppable, right? Like we see Kaminga in transition. Like sometimes he's like out of control, but for the most part, he's going to get to the rim, and once he gets there, he's probably going to finish.
Yeah.
Whereas with Wiggins, it's like we've been saying this for years. Like, bro, just dunk the ball.
I
Um,
know. I know.
he can
He
dunk
really could
so
be
easily.
he really could be a threat going downhill. He just needs to be more consistent with it.
Yeah, for sure. Like it shouldn't be Euro finger roll. It should be Euro. I'm gonna just quick dunk. It doesn't
Right.
have to be power like you're dunking on Luca every time. Just put the ball in the rim. Like he's so athletic, his arms are so long that he can dunk with very minimal effort. So I'm just very confused as to why he doesn't just dunk more. But yeah, just more aggressiveness. I think Draymond is going to naturally bring that out of him. just from a personality standpoint, but also Draymond looks for guys like him, and he's 6'7". Like Chris Paul is 6 foot. So even though they run a lot of the same motion off and stuff, Chris Paul might not see Wiggins a lot of
Right.
times, where Draymond can see over the defense a lot of times. So he gets Clay on back cuts and he gets Wiggins on back cuts more often. But yeah, I think he'll be better. Kerr kind of called him out a little bit, and he benched him. So I think we'll see how he responds. I think he's the type of player that will respond well to that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And he wants to play well. Like he said,
mhm.
we don't know that he's really realistically going to be able to be an all-star again, but like he should be able to make a defensive team. He wants to be an all-star. That's my point. And so, he wants to play well. I think he does. He understood how key he was to the team last year. So, I expect it to be better. And, I mean, how much positive can you say about Moody and Kaminga? I mean, they're looking good, right?
Yeah. And I mean, this is something that I've been saying early in the season. Like, you have to lean into these guys. Like, they are the youth athleticism that you need that closes that size gap for you. If you play too small, um, like you're gonna have Steph or CP on the court at all times. At least you should one of them on the court at all times. You should probably have one of Dre, Looney, or Dario, kind of like really Looney or Dario on the court for most of the game. And that middle, the shooting guard, small forward, and power forward are kind of all interchangeable in the Warrior system. Like all those dudes play the same positions. So you have to lean into that. That's what gives you the edge on most teams, because most teams don't have as good of wings as we do, right? Like Moody is probably our fifth best wing, fourth, if depending on how you rank him and Gary. And he's better than a lot of like starting wings. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like he came in, he can just do in the way that Kaminga can do things that nobody else on the team can do. Moody in his own way can do things that nobody else on the team can do, right? His arms are so long. He's on the weak side and they're passing the ball over towards the paint. And he can just get a dig steal like from the other 3-point line almost because his arm is so long. He got 3 steals just from having ridiculously long arms and being active. So I think he can do things like that on a consistent basis. They put him on Eric Gordon one-on-one, and he just completely locked Eric Gordon down. His length is just too much for a guy like Eric Gordon. So he needs to play more. Kaminga needs to play more. Gary needs to play more, right? So you have to eat into the small guards minutes. Corey Joseph should have never saw the floor. I don't care about foul trouble, right? Chris Paul ended
I
up
wouldn't have minded if Pods got a few minutes if he was going to go with someone, but whatever. Neither
yeah,
here nor
Pods
there.
is better. Yeah, Pods is probably better than Corey Joseph at this point. Hopefully, I mean, at some point he'll get the rotation, and then he'll probably just never give it back to Corey. But I mean, Chris Paul, what's 36 minutes, something like that? That's obviously Steph foul trouble.
Right.
All that 34 minutes.
What
Clay,
kind of game do you think we'll see Trace in?
I don't know. He needs to play though. Like that's kind of like the point I'm getting to. If you are missing Draymond or you're missing any of your wings, you need to lean more into the size rather than leaning into the guards. Like they should never be 2 guards. If anything, you should play 2 bigs. And I think they have the versatility to do that. I think Dario and Trace can play together. I think Trace and Draymond can play together. I think Dario and Looney maybe not because they're both too slow. But I think Dario and Draymond can play together. Like you have options to mix up with 2 bigs that
Right.
have athleticism rather than 2 guards. So I think that will close that size gap a lot more. You won't get killed on the boards like that. And just guys will be in a better offensive flow. Chris Paul can do his Chris Paul thing. Steph can do his Steph thing. They're 2 smart players, but they're 2 different players. So I think giving them their own time to do their specific thing and lean into their superpowers will help the team and help them individually. And then you won't get killed in the glass because you just have more athleticism and size on the court at all times. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, before we conclude, I just want to, you know, I feel like this was actually, they didn't get the W. And of course, you always want the result. But I think with Draymond's absence, this was a pretty good game for them in terms of how they played, particularly defensively. So you saw some areas where Draymond was missing offensively. But to me, the biggest places where you saw it was probably rebounds.
Mhm.
And just like we said, mentioned earlier, some places where Dre will see some of the other players and get them involved that maybe with Chris Paul being new to the team and Steph being in foul trouble didn't go down. But they did lose this game. And they have a really tough road schedule ahead of them. Now, I don't think Draymond is going to miss that much time, right? Like before, when we first heard about his injury, we talked about the worst case scenarios. I mean, like they didn't clear him for last night's game, but he's already like back on the court with them and stuff like that. So, they looking at the schedule, they have the Kings Friday, right? And then they have a back-to-back with
Houston and New Orleans.
and the Pelicans. Yeah. So I feel like that's the latest we'd see him, like after the Pelicans game. But I feel like he could come back before that.
Yeah. I mean, if he was questionable or doubtful, whatever, for this game, I assume that he'll be, upgraded for the Kings game, or at least,
Right.
50-50
That's
game
2 more
time decision.
days.
Yeah, like they have today and the next day to get him ready. Maybe
And they'll be able to practice because it's 2 days, but it's just the Kings, so they don't have to like
they'll have to
fly.
travel.
And we always know that's like a key component of them bringing players back, like getting able to like practice and have them do something. So
Mhm.
I think there's a chance we could get him back Friday. I just don't know. We'll hear more.
Yeah.
But let's say he's not back. How do you like their chances versus the Kings?
I like their chances. I mean, if they play the way they should play, which is
And
wing
they play them
heavy.
in the off season without them, and they beat them both times. And I get it; it's the preseason, but both teams were trying in them games.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, the Kings are a good team. They're going to be, I think it's their home opener, so they're going to be juiced up. But you're coming off an L. Nobody really played well other than Moody, Gary. Like a few guys played well, but none of them played amazingly. So
Right.
I think they're going to be hyped up and ready to go. I mean, I like their chances. This is a tough stretch, but I like their chances over this stretch. Like, it's not a ton of like
Yeah,
unbeatable teams.
it's tough. Look, the only I want to say give me's, and I don't want to really disrespect any NBA team in there, are the Rockets and Detroit, but that's the second night of a back to back. So it's a tough stretch in that it's being away, and it can be tougher depending on how many of those games Draymond might miss.
Mhm.
But there are definitely winnable games in there, and I still want them to come out with a winning record. So
Yeah.
they have to do that. They need to prove to themselves that last year was an anomaly with the road games, and they just you just can't start your season off like bad. You can't. So they're gonna just have to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, I think all these games are winnable. Like, I mean, the Denver one is going to be tough on the road. But these are all young teams that they're going against on the road. So, like, if you just out execute them, you can definitely beat them. Even the New Orleans on a back to back, like New Orleans is kind of banged up right now. Um, Zion looks fat right now, so we'll see if they. I mean, they might take it serious and say, "Hey, we're going to
I
play
feel
our
like
guys."
they always lose to New Orleans on back to
Because
back, but this year's a little different.
they only play them on back to backs for some reason on
I
road.
know it's very
Like,
strange.
it's so weird based on. I mean, like, I guess it's just the geography of it, but
But I think they're going to get to see Steph. It's unlikely this early in the season players are going to be rested,
mhm,
and with them already taking 1 L in the opener, and depending on how the Kings game goes, I just don't see a place where anyone's going to be rested for that game.
right, and they're really emphasizing how important it is to get off to a good start. So I mean, I don't want to make any predictions, but I think they should be fine.
Yeah, or maybe if they go another game without Dre, they say let's bring Dre back on the second night of the back to back to sort of invigorate things. I don't know.
Could be.
Okay. Well, look, again, not what we wanted, but the Dubs are looking good. The Dubs are looking good. And I just want to say really quickly, you know who else was looking good? Devin Booker, which we noted already. It might be time to really consider him one of those upper level guys.
Mhm.
I've been a little late to do it, but he looked really good last night. I still think he should actually be the Suns point guard, so it'll be interesting to see how they
I
play
think he
this
will be.
season.
Yeah, I think he will be. I mean, he's a monster. Like,
They designated Beal as it, which I never got, but
yeah,
I always thought it needed to be Booker, and his playmaking was pretty good last night.
yeah, he's one of the very best offensive players in the league. Like, he really doesn't have a weakness on O. So, yeah, he's definitely up there.
For sure.
He's continuing what he did in the playoffs last year, which was some historical stuff. So,
For
good play.
sure. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in with us. We'll be back. Obviously, season started, more regular podcast episodes. So thank you for sticking by us. Make sure you are following us at Golden Spaces Pod on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you are subscribed to 95.7 The Game's YouTube channel, where you can watch our episodes of Golden Spaces Pod. Make sure you are giving us 5-star ratings and leaving positive reviews. We appreciate all that. And thank you for the support. Justin and I appreciate y'all so much. Until next time, take care.